What's your favorite Hendrix?
Ooh,
Just it had to be.
there's a lot of points, but I was always a sucker for Little Wing. And there's one called May This Be Love. I like the gentler side of Hendrix, although the fiery side is great as well. But what used to be surprising was that he could do this sort of tender stuff as well. And I've used Ebo a lot, and the way that I approach Ebo is very much inspired by the way that Hendrix played guitar on this track called May This Be Love from his first album, the Hendrix Experience first album, which was called By Experienced. And it's a very flowing, where the notes seem seamlessly joined together in the way that an Ebo does, but he did it without Ebo because he didn't have Ebo in those days. And it has a very oriental tonality to the notes. And that was a big inspiration.
Do you still play the old chrome Ebo, or do you have one of the new plastic ones?
Yeah, well I had some of the new ones because Greg Heath, who designed them, gave me, in fact the last time I was in Los Angeles, that's some of the things just come back to me. He came to the show at the Berlin, which I think he gave me some for the new ones, which he said he'd been able to go back into business. He went out of business for a while. And he said I'd helped put them back in business because that sort of spread the word around various guitar players in England. They all wanted to buy them and so on. And I produced different bands, and whenever I produced different bands, I'd say out to the guitar player, try this for this section, see this. What's this? Oh, it's an Ebo, you know. And they go, wow, this is great. And I say, okay, keep it. And gradually all the new ones that Greg had given me, because he gave me half a dozen, I think, ended up in the hands of other players. So I've only got my original 2 chrome ones that I bought from the first time I bought them in LA, the first time I came to LA. So I've still got the original. I'll be using them tonight.
So are you playing strictly electric guitar? Or
Yeah, just electric tonight. I mean, I had to limit what I could carry and I wrote and rodeo.
pulling everything yourself?
So yeah, sound okay. Just try and take one guitar.
You know, you can pull out an acoustic and do House of Sand or something up there.
No. I mean, that might happen. You know, I want to try and put a band together. And at one time, it would have to be in a band that did whatever the latest album was, and that and nothing else. But now, again, it's this sort of thing. I think it's the time is right to do a concert, which could be quite a long concert if people are up for it. If I've got the strength for it.
Yeah, good 2-hour retrospective.
Yeah, and just like come on with an acoustic, do a track from Northern Dreams to Northern Dreams, and then just go through it album by album, and just do a little piece, or pick the best. Something that I can relate to still, and bring it up to date, and then do the new thing at the end of the set. Do whatever I've recorded.
For Raiding the Divine Archive, did you select those tracks, or did somebody?
No, EMI.
EMI did. They seemed to pick all the singles, and then at the end they picked all the good album tracks.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe.
I think I maybe suggested some that were favourites, but as far as the actual final choices were ignored, they did that. I mean, a lot of that album was done with very little input from the band, because it was done after the band.
And the edits on some of the modern music tracks are kind of broken.
Yeah, a lot of that was EMI's choice.
Do you have a favourite album over your career, or was it always the most recent?
It can vary. I mean, one of the things from the past that I still like is an album called Love That Whirls.
That's one of my favorites.
And I don't know why that is, but there's something about that album I like.
It's very polished and has a definite finish.
Yeah.
Polish, especially coming off of Quit Dreaming, which was kind of very crude, is not the right word, more primitive.
Yeah, well, we recorded that in a wooden hut in the village where I lived, using the Stones mobile truck, and a lot of it was actually sort of put together mixed in the truck rather than in the studio. So it has that sort of rustic quality to it. And I was using very primitive synthesizers, I don't know, so it's fairly good. But yeah, Love That Whirls was a little, it was done at Rockfield, it was experimenting a bit more with some of the technical aspects.
A lot of your albums, the last song on the record has a sense of closure. Even like Darkness, Islands of the Dead, Quit Dreaming, Get on the Beam. It's just kind of sailing off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Is that
intentional? Well, yeah.
It is.
I mean, I take a lot of care in what goes where usually. I really feel the album's a total thing, not just a collection of songs, and that when you, as you used to do, drop the needle into the groove on the first song, that it takes you on a whole journey through a landscape and you emerge at the other side somewhere else. you visited logically a whole sequence of places on the way. So that choice of whatever, and with the writing of it as well, particularly in the days when I wrote the album before going in the studio, which I had to do with the band, and I had to demo things. I thought very definitely in terms of a whole album concept and what would be a song to finish with.
Does this mean there's a whole stack of tapes of demo versions of Be Bop
Oh
Deluxe
yeah,
songs?
at home like that.
Is that going to be a 5 CD box set that comes out next year?
I don't know. It'd be interesting actually. I mean, a lot of them are just on the cassette because I didn't have anything else to mix onto in those days.
Well, neither was the last Beatles.
Yeah, but some of them, are quite interesting. They've got the same sort of melodies and structures, but obviously.
Are they just acoustic guitar?
No, mini mode. I have the mini mode at home and electric guitar. A 4-track machine.
4-track demos?
Yeah, and bouncing, to sort of add extra things. And little drum kits sometimes pots and pans depending on
Alright, I like it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Touch. In fact, going back to the drums, you mix live drums with drum machines. And why don't people do that more?
I don't know, maybe they do.
It gets rid of the repetitiveness of the drum machine.
Even sometimes when I'm playing drum samples, there'll be perhaps just one element actually sequenced. Maybe like the hi-hat pattern is constant, and perhaps the bass drum pattern is a fast one. But then everything else I'll dub onto a track, still using samples, but actually playing it on the keyboard and playing it in real time without hooking it into the sequencer, so that it's got that little bit of a looseness in the sound.
So you can program that into drum machines, but it sounds artificial completely.
Well, also it takes ages, and I mean, usually when an idea is going, you want to get it to tape. You don't want to sort of sit there punching buttons for 2 hours, because by the time you've done that, you've got bored with it. You've heard it so many times, and you think maybe this is not a good song at all. Then you move on to the next one, then the next one, and before long, 3 days have gone and you haven't put anything on tape. So for me, the process is get it down very, very quickly in those situations, and so the programming I keep to a minute.
You mentioned you have 52 records on this?
I think, well, I actually got a list from a guy in the States who does an internet page, and he got over 60, but I think some were sort of alternate versions that
like getting Holy Ghost across.
Yeah. But I think in terms of individual albums, some are double albums, so therefore they count as 2 albums, but I think that's 50 some albums.
Does it bother you immensely that there are variations between the European releases and the American? Or is it just out of your hands? And
it did bother me in that one instance with the CBS album, which was, in England it was Getting the Holy Ghost across. And it was going to come out with exactly the same sleeve, the same running order, the same title in America, and then they found that some record stores that they were planning, the distributors were planning putting it into in the States, were owned by a company or were a company that were basically a family company who were fundamentalist right-wing Christians. And they felt that this wouldn't be stopped because of the title.
strictly the title?
The title was one thing, the other was the alchemic writing.
Symbols.
Which actually, if you had the book to decode it anyway, because I had books with it, all it said was my name and the name of the album anyway. It wasn't like saying, Satan Lives or anything like this. And there was a painting on the front which was by a Renaissance painter called Gribelli, which was called the Annunciation, which showed the dove, the Holy Spirit descending upon Mary at the biblical Annunciation. So it had a very Christian kind of picture, although I was using it in its alchemic sense. And there was, 1 or 2 occult symbols on the back, but again, nothing sinister, nothing dark, because I wasn't into that aspect of it anyway. But they thought this was going to be a big problem in the States. And so we had to change the title. Well, they got some guy in-house to do a new sleeve, an abstract sleeve for it. And they also wanted to interfere with the running order a little bit, and some different versions of songs on. So I just was, by this time, just get it out, do it. But then they brought me over to New York to do some interviews, and the people who came to do the interviews had actually beforehand got import copies from England. So the first thing they said was, how come it's a different time and a different sleeve? So I had to explain. So this whole thing about the occultist side of things got far more attention than it would have done if they'd just released it in its original form. Because virtually every interview that I did, they were asking this question. So the whole bit about magic and so on got exaggerated.
So I know a lot of times when the albums first come out, I buy the vinyl, import, and the American would come out and have a different track or something.
Yeah.
And then the CD would come out on import with bonus tracks.
That's right.
And then the American would have American-only bonus tracks.
Yeah.
And I ended up with 2 copies of basically every record.
Well, my ex-manager, who I ended up in court with from last year, did a deal with Enigma Records here for licensing Cultural Records products. And there was a lot of things of that nature that happened that I didn't find out about until it actually happened. You know. But I mean, I'm all for bonus tracks anyway, and I've always believed it. I think, particularly in England, CDs are so expensive.
And you put them in the middle between side 1 and side 2 rather than at the end, where most people stick them. Is that...
No, well, it's probably nothing to do with me at the time.
It just seems an interesting place. You know, you don't, some people don't want to break up side 1 and side 2, and you have a conclusion song at the end. So stick it in the middle.
Yeah. I can't remember choosing where those went, so maybe somebody else did that over here. I don't know.
Out of your control.
Yeah.
Okay, well I should let you go. So you've been going for a while.